Hey everyone, I'm Brett, and welcome to Nightwood Guns. Today we are going to be talking about the 3 most common mistakes I see people make when it comes to dry fire practice. Now, dry fire practice is one of the most important things you can do to up your marksmanship game. But there are a few things that you can do that can cause some training scars that will actually hurt you on the live fire range. And be sure to stick around to the end of the video, because once I've gone over how to fix the 3 most common mistakes people make in dry fire practice, if you apply them, you are going to see massive gains in your marksmanship abilities. If you're new around here and you'd like to support the channel and you're looking for something to read, I'm an author and I wrote 2 short novels, Armed Instinct and its sequel, Countdown to Dawn. The link is in the description below if you'd like to pick up a couple of copies. And if you've already picked up copies of the book, be sure to leave reviews on Amazon. That is the #1 way you can support the channel. Now let's hop right into the 3 most common mistakes I see people make during dry fire and how to fix it. So of course, when you're dry firing, you want to make sure that you have a very empty firearm, and you need to be aware of what you are pointing your gun at and what is beyond it, because bullets travel through walls. So please, especially if you're my neighbor, dry fire responsibly. Now, the first mistake that I see people make during dry fire practice is they have a lazy or too loose of a grip on the gun. Now, this usually happens because you're watching YouTube and you're dry firing at the light switch on the wall, or you're dry firing at the bad guys in John Wick. But it's really easy to get lazy with your grip and have too loose of a grip and focus purely on the trigger press. This can show up in a training scar by when you actually go out to the range to shoot and you've trained your brain to have a loose grip on the gun. You can just subconsciously fall into having too loose of a grip on the gun. Either before you start shooting or after that first shot has broken, your grip loosens. Then you start fighting the squeezies. Now, the squeezies are when you are squeezing your hands while you're squeezing the trigger. Now, you can't feel that you're doing it because the gun is discharging and recoiling in your hand, but if you're getting shots that are low left, that are typically diagnosed as shot anticipation or flinching, that is exacerbated exponentially by having a loose grip on the gun and squeezing your hands while you're shooting. So while you're dry fire practicing, make sure you have a proper tight grip on the gun with both your support hand and your shooting hand. And don't forget, you get a large portion of your grip strength from your pinky fingers. So you want to make sure that you have strong pinkies on both hands. That way you're training your brain, your subconscious, and your muscle memory to have a tight grip on the gun during live fire. Now, the second mistake that I see people make during dry fire practice is also related to grip pressure. Now, this one usually comes in when you want to get a lot of reps in. I mean, there are a lot of bad guys on the screen in John Wick, especially John Wick 2 and 3. But essentially what happens is you get your nice good grip on the gun, you prep the trigger, you press the trigger, you cycle it. You prep the trigger, you press the trigger, you cycle it. Prep the trigger, you press the trigger, you cycle it. Now, this makes sure that you get a lot of reps in, and it's a lot of fun, and it's a lot less boring than doing it slowly, but this can create a really gnarly training scar. Now, I'm not saying you're gonna go out to the range and live fire, and you're gonna press the gun out, you're gonna prep the trigger, boom, and then go to cycle the gun and be like, oh wait, no, I'm not supposed to do that. I'm not saying that's gonna happen, because your brain and your subconscious aren't stupid. Well, at least, hopefully they're not. But your muscle memory does tend to pick up on little things. And essentially what you're training yourself to do by prep the trigger, press the trigger, cycle, prep the trigger, press the trigger, cycle, is you're training yourself to loosen the grip on your support hand every time you press the trigger. So prep the trigger, press the trigger, cycle, prep the trigger, press the trigger, cycle. And what that can turn into out at the range is you prep the trigger, press the trigger, and you loosen your grip. And then guess what happens? When you go to press the trigger again, you tighten your grip, prep the trigger, press the trigger, loosen. Tighten, loosen, tighten, loosen. And we got ourselves another case of the squeezies, this time with just the support hand, and that's just enough to send your shots going low left, or of course low right if you're a lefty. And it can be very frustrating not knowing why you're shooting poorly, because again, you can't feel yourself squeezing your hands while the gun is recoiling and discharging in your hand. So to remedy this, essentially what you want to do is get your nice tight grip on the gun, prep the trigger, press the trigger, and then follow through with the grip. You're gonna prep the trigger, press the trigger, follow through with the grip. Now, I usually like to go to a count of about 3. So prep the trigger, press the trigger, 1, 2, 3, and then cycle it. Don't even loosen your hand a little bit. Prep the trigger, press the trigger, 1, 2, 3, cycle it. Prep the trigger, press the trigger, 1, 2, 3, cycle it. Much like basketball following through with your shot, this is following through with your grip pressure. Because the goal during live fire is to have consistent, strong grip pressure while you're shooting. Again, we want to avoid the squeezies. Now, the third mistake I see people make is not mimicking or imitating a trigger reset. So let's say we have remedied those first 2 mistakes that people make, and we get our nice strong grip pressure on the gun, and we prep the trigger, press the trigger, and follow through, 1, 2, 3. What a lot of people will do is they will hold the trigger to the rear, cycle the gun, reset it, and then dry fire again. Now, this can turn into a training scar because you are training your brain that after the gun goes off, you keep the trigger pinned to the rear, or at least you hold it to the rear, and you are trying to feel that tactile reset. Now again, while this might not matter in bullseye shooting or slow fire, when it comes to defensive shooting or any kind of action shooting, this training scar can make a difference. If you speak to any high-level competitive shooter, they will tell you that their goal is to reset the trigger before the slide is finished cycling. Now, while that is at a very high level of competition, the principle still applies. We want to have that trigger reset as quickly as possible, so as soon as that slide returns to battery, we can prep and press the trigger again. The training scar that pops up when you are doing dry fire that way, where you hold the trigger to the rear, cycle it, and then reset, and then prep and press, is it can result in trigger freeze. Now, if you've ever had this happen, it is when you are shooting bang, 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 and you don't reset the trigger all the way, you kind of flinch a little bit because your trigger finger didn't quite move far enough forward. So of course, how do we remedy that? We get our nice, strong grip on the gun, we prep the trigger, press the trigger, and imitate a reset. So the trigger is not actually going to reset because you haven't cycled it, but you still are imitating a reset. So you get your nice, strong grip on the gun, you prep the trigger, press the trigger, and immediately release the trigger. I'm not saying like send your finger flying out of the trigger guard, but we are going to prep, press, and release immediately. Now this is where you're going to see incredible gains in your live fire shooting sessions, when you can stack all three of these remedies together. So we get our nice strong grip on the gun with both hands, we prep the trigger, press the trigger, and release the trigger immediately, all while following through with our grip pressure. Because the second you release that trigger, your brain is going to want to make your hands release their grip pressure as well. So if you can maintain your grip pressure, prep, press, release, and maintain, hold, follow through 1, 2, 3, and then cycle the gun, get your nice strong grip, prep, press, release, 1, 2, 3, and cycle the gun. If you make those remedies a part of your dry fire routine, like I said, the gains that you're going to see on the live fire range will speak for themselves. Now there's no 100% right or wrong way to do dry fire practice, but there are good ways and there are bad ways. And if you think that I'm full of shit, I'm going to encourage you to print off the Tier 1 Concealed 3/7s drill, give it a shot, clear it, then you can start giving me suggestions. Well, hopefully you found this video useful. If you have any other questions about dry fire practice, drop them in the comments down below. If I see it, I'll be sure to answer it, see if I can help you out. And who knows, maybe if your question is good enough, it will be addressed in its very own video. As of right now, I have 5,600 subscribers. Man, the subscriber train just keeps on shooting up. If you want to continue to see my channel grow, be sure to like, comment, subscribe. If you can take a couple of seconds to click those buttons and type those keys, it really helps the channel grow. That's all I have for today. I will see you in the next video. I'm Brett, and this was Nightwood Guns. Nightwood out.